Good morning, you're watching Daybreak and I'm your host Nadia Jani, here to take you through the morning's top stories. Let's take a look at today's headlines. At least 62 people killed in Mexico after a raid on cartel leader spikes nationwide violence. Former UK ambassador to the US, Peter Mandelson, has been released on bail after being arrested in connection to his links to Jeffrey Epstein. And thousands rally across Europe in support of Ukraine as the war enters its fourth year. First, this morning, at least 62 people have been killed in Mexico after a military raid targeting one of the country's most wanted cartel leaders triggered coordinated violence across more than a dozen states. Troops were deployed and flights disrupted as authorities tried to regain full control. Here's the report.
Security remains tight across several states in Mexico after a pre-dawn military operation against cartel leader Nemesio Oseguera, better known as El Mencho, left at least 62 people dead and sparked coordinated violence nationwide. Among those killed were 25 members of the National Guard and 34 suspected gang members. Dozens more were injured as cartel loyalists set up 85 roadblocks in more than a dozen states, torching vehicles and blocking highways. The government has deployed 2,000 additional troops to Jalisco, the stronghold of the Jalisco New Generation cartel. The operation comes amid renewed pressure from US President Donald Trump on Mexico to intensify its crackdown on drug trafficking ahead of a review of the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement Trade Pact.
All operations are carried out by federal forces. There is no U.S. participation in the operation. What there is, as we have said here several times, is a great deal of information sharing. The understanding with the United States is based primarily on the exchange of intelligence information.
Officials say a tip linked to El Mencho's romantic relationships led security forces to his hideout in the mountain town of Tapalpa. He was wounded in a firefight and died while being airlifted to Mexico City. In Guadalajara, streets remain unusually quiet, with businesses shut and public transport running below normal levels.
Yes, I'm afraid, but I also need to work, and so we're working here, but keeping an eye on the situation, and depending on it, we'll see if we take shelter or continue working.
Tourism has also been affected, with flights to Puerto Vallarta and Guadalajara suspended over the weekend.
It's not possible to get out right now because, first, we're not allowed to leave the resort under any circumstance, so we're locked down in the resort. And even if we went out on the streets, the cartel would stop us and force us to get out of the car and light the car on fire. So the whole city is under lockdown. No one is going out because everyone is scared of getting stopped by the cartel.
Oseguera was considered Mexico's most wanted drug trafficker and headed one of the country's most powerful and heavily armed criminal organizations with global operations. President Claudia Sheinbaum said on Monday morning that roadblocks had been cleared and the situation was expected to normalize, with flights due to resume on Monday or Tuesday.
Now let's take a look at the global stories making headlines across the morning. And we go with our first story, which you just saw, about violence in Mexico, and that's on the Guardian website as well. Violence in Mexico after military kills notorious drug cartel boss, a visual guide. Now, you would have heard in the report all the information and the details as to how this came across. It happened with the military operation of the country, as well as it being linked to his romantic links, which was able to find out where he was actually living at the time some of where he was a gun spat broke out, and unfortunately he died when he was airlifted to hospital. But if we scroll all the way down on this article, I want to show you a map of exactly where El Mencho was positioned, as well as a few things in regards to this. So the Guardian actually has a photo site of everything that took place, including a number of explosions that took place as well between the cartel and the government. As you would have heard, the president, Claudia Sheinbaum, urged calm and authority, said all the more than 250 cartel roadblocks across 20 states had been cleared. So if we just look at this map here that I'm just going to show. Brilliant. So the map here details quite a number of things. So it shows the, as you can see on the screen, Jalisco, the worst affected state that has been seeing a number of explosions. And then Tapalapa, which is actually where this cartel boss, El Mencho, was killed. Now, that's what his killing has caused a number of cartel fighting with the national military there as well, just to put things into context. And if we keep scrolling down, I just want to show you what's going on in the Guadalajara airport. There was also some form of chaos there when people realized what was happening and things were moving to different parts of the area in hysteria. So if we just scroll all the way down, you've got people on beaches, so the tourists also have been impacted by this as well. People saying, authorities saying for them to keep safe and in their hotels and things like that. If you keep on scrolling all the way down, you'll see a video that actually highlights some of the hysteria in one of the main airports as well. Yep, after all the police raid, right at the bottom. Here we are. So this is, if you keep scrolling down, so here is where the panic at the Guadalajara airport. Here, a number of people running around, as you'll see up here in the video that we're showing. So there was a bit of hysteria happening here once he had been killed, once the cartel boss had been killed. People running up the escalators to safety, not really knowing what was going on, as it kind of spread over into the airport, into Guadalajara airport. They're saying everything is fine now, but before that time, when no one knew what was happening, this was the scene at the local airport. Okay, now we're going to go to our next headline, which is on the CNN website, and it's in regards to the former UK ambassador to the US, Peter Mandelson, arrested amid Epstein probe. Now, we know there has been a number of links following the further release of the Epstein files earlier this month, and it has now led to Peter Mandelson being arrested on Monday on suspicion of misconduct in public office, and that's according to London's Metropolitan Police. He's also been accused of passing market-sensitive information to the convicted offender Jeffrey Epstein when he was business secretary in the UK government. Now, why is this happening? This follows search warrants at 2 addresses in his Wiltshire and Camden areas. We know that Mandelson was later released earlier this morning by the police, and the police spokesman said, and the revelations from the latest release of Epstein's files led to Mandelson's resignation, which we saw earlier this year. It also led to a number of other resignations. The Prime Minister's chief aide, Morgan McSweeney, also resigned because he was part of electing Mandelson, or recommending Mandelson to come into this particular position. We know that last week also former Prince Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was also arrested and taken into police custody and then was later released. So there's a number of things coming out from links to the Epstein files, which we'll keep you updated on. But this is the latest that has happened as the police investigation continues. Now we'll go over to our next headline this morning, and that's on the BBC website, and that's in regards to Peru. So 15 killed after a helicopter crashes during Peru flood rescue. So just to keep your breast after this, a military helicopter was providing rescue services during severe flooding in the country in South Peru when it crashed on Sunday. Now, the Peruvian Air Force said that the Mi-17 aircraft lost radio contact while operating in the Arequipa region. Now, rescue teams found the wreckage in the Chala district on Monday, and which is what we're now seeing now. They said that 7 children were among the 11 passengers and 4 crew members who died because of the helicopter crash. Now, it had been deployed to support search and rescue efforts in the region as mudslides and overflowing rivers caused widespread damage. The Peruvian Air Force said, "Our deepest condolences to the family members and friends and the entire FAP family for the irreparable loss of crew and passengers." And if we quickly just go to the next headline that's making news on Euronews, that's in regards to Iran. Iranian students renew anti-government protests in Tehran amid US build-up. So this is the 3rd day of protests that students have been taking, and basically, it's anti-government protests, demonstrators Monday spreading to campuses all across certain parts of Tehran. There was one university, or women university, Al-Azhar University in Tehran, where anti-government slogans were chanted and Iranian flags were burned and torn. So we do know this is building, and it might go on to a 4th or 5th day. Now, students climbed trees in the campus and hung a number of different things, saying that they no longer want the current president, Ayatollah, to be in government anymore. Reports also said that students chanted death to the dictator for a number of reasons that we know that over the past since January, there's been a number of protests, and the Iranian government has been quite forceful in how they have been managing that. We also know that the US military forces are adding pressure in regards to talks and bilateral discussions in relation to Iran's nuclear weapons program as well. The talks are now scheduled for this Thursday in Geneva, but Trump has warned that if nothing happens, if they're not able to come to an agreement, really bad things might happen. We don't know what that means, but we do know there's a massive military buildup, so it could result in a number of strikes to Iran if something is not agreed soon. Now, that was your press roundup. We're now going to take a short break. When I return, I'll discuss the rest of the global stories. Stay with me. Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak. Now, let's take a look at the global stories. Lord Peter Mandelson, the former UK ambassador to the United States, has been released on bail. It's after he was arrested by London police on Monday on suspicion of misconduct in public office. It follows revelations over his ties to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Mandelson denies any wrongdoing. There was no immediate response from Mandelson's lawyers. Following on from this, fresh allegations linked to Jeffrey Epstein have reignited political pressure in Westminster, with a senior Conservative MP raising the prospect of treason and calling for a parliamentary inquiry into potential corruption and foreign influence. Our correspondent in Manchester brings us more.
The UK's former Security Minister Tom Tugendhat has raised the prospect of treason as he called for a special parliamentary committee made up of MPs, peers and retired judges to investigate Epstein-linked allegations involving Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor and Lord Mandelson. In an interview with the Sun newspaper, he said the body should have powers to summon witnesses and demand documents to examine allegations of foreign influence and national security risks linked to the Epstein scandal. Tugendhat questioned what the palace and ministers knew and whether Britain's treason laws, written more than 700 years ago, need to be updated. He says Parliament must consider what the scandal means for the country beyond what a court might decide. Under UK law, treason includes plotting the death of the monarch, waging war against the crown, or aiding the king's enemies. If proven, it is one of the most serious crimes in British law, historically carrying the death penalty and now punishable by life imprisonment. Both Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor and Lord Mandelson are under police investigation for alleged misconduct in public office, but both deny any criminal wrongdoing. The former prince was arrested and released under investigation over claims he passed confidential reports while serving as a trade envoy. Mandelson is alleged to have shared market-sensitive information with Epstein while a government minister. If treason were ever proven, it would mean a member of the royal family committed one of the gravest crimes against the crown during the reign of his own mother, Queen Elizabeth II. The last person convicted of treason in the UK was jailed in 2023 over a plot to kill Queen Elizabeth, for which he was sentenced to 9 years in prison. Zena Farisada, News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
Across several European cities, thousands gathered in support of Ukraine as the war enters its fourth year. Demonstrators say the conflict cannot be normalized, even as diplomatic efforts attempt to restart talks.
Pro-Ukraine supporters filled the streets across Europe and beyond to mark 4 years of full-scale war in Ukraine. From Milan to Budapest, from Istanbul to Barcelona, thousands marched in solidarity. A reminder that 4 years on, the war continues to shape lives far beyond Ukraine's borders. In Milan, protesters condemned the decision to allow Russian and Belarusian athletes to compete in the upcoming Paralympic Games, arguing that sport cannot be separated from a conflict that has cost so many lives.
Ukrainian diaspora, we are really annoyed, and we are really bothered by this decision of World Olympic Organization about the participation of Belarusian and Russian ex-militaries in the Paralympic Games. It's really like trying to forget and cancel the 4 years of war fought in Ukraine, thousands and thousands of deaths in Ukraine.
In Budapest, around 1,000 Hungarians and Ukrainian expatriates gathered as the issue becomes entangled in domestic politics ahead of Hungary's parliamentary elections. Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has framed the vote as a choice between war or peace. Protesters rejected that narrative, insisting the responsibility for the conflict lies squarely with Moscow.
I expected from the start that Ukraine will be the enemy target, and it will become the height of the election campaign. But I have not noticed in my surroundings that the view of the war would have changed significantly. We are not talking about the view of Ukraine, but it is about a war that Russia had started and refuses to stop.
In Istanbul, dozens of Ukrainians held a memorial for missing and captive soldiers, kneeling in silence and holding photographs of loved ones who have not returned. In Madrid and Barcelona, thousands marched under banners reading "Ukraine defends us all" and 4 years still fighting for freedom.
I'm here for all the people suffering in Ukraine. Many have lost their homes, their friends, their family. For all the men and women on the front who are fighting for our freedom and our rights.
As the war moves into its 5th year, it has claimed an immense human toll. The Center for Strategic and International Studies estimates around 1.2 million Russian battle casualties, including roughly 325,000 killed. Ukrainian casualties are put at between 500,000 and 600,000, with up to 140,000 deaths. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said earlier this month, 55,000 Ukrainian soldiers have been killed in the entire war. Fresh negotiations between Russia and Ukraine are expected to resume in Geneva on February 26th. Yet despite renewed diplomatic efforts, missile and drone strikes continue, underscoring how far any lasting settlement still appears.
European Union foreign ministers have failed to reach an agreement on a 20th package of sanctions against Russia. Hungary has blocked the proposal on the 4th anniversary of Russia's invasion in Ukraine. Budapest's foreign minister says the country will not support any EU decision that benefits Ukraine as long as Kyiv continues to stop oil deliveries to Hungary via the Druzhba pipeline. Kyiv says that pipeline is damaged after Russian strikes. The fighting continues, however, after an explosion outside a Moscow railway station has killed a police officer and injured 2 others. That's according to Russian news agency quoting the police, saying the suspect died at the scene of the blast. The agency said that police investigators reviewed video footage showing a suspect approaching a police car near Sverdlovsky Station Square and placed a device there. The incident took place in the early hours of Tuesday morning. The two injured police officers were taken to hospital for treatment. Officials have yet to provide a motive for the incident. The European Union has postponed a vote on its July 2025 trade agreement with Washington. It's after the US Supreme Court struck down President Donald Trump's previous tariffs, prompting him to impose new import taxes. Ross Cullen has more from Paris.
Well, the European Union arguing on Monday that the whole picture when it comes to the Brussels-Washington trade relationship has now changed as a result of the US Supreme Court's decision to strike down President Trump's tariffs and then the president's response to impose new import taxes of 10%. And then over the weekend, he announced they would be increased to 15%. The European Union Parliament was due to have a vote on the trade accord that was signed in July 2025 by the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and Donald Trump. That vote, set to take place on Tuesday, has now been postponed. As a result of this, they are freezing the ratification process for that trade deal because of all of the uncertainty provoked by the US Supreme Court decision. And the EU spokesman saying on Monday that a deal is a deal, you have to honour it. The US must provide answers to the European Union as to how that trading landscape between both sides is going to look going forward. They want answers to be able to provide stable solutions for European consumers and European businesses. Ross Cullen, A News, Paris.
Talks over Iran's nuclear program are set to resume this week, with mediation efforts intensifying in the middle of mounting regional tensions. Tehran says it remains open to a new negotiated solution, while Washington has warned of serious consequences if diplomacy fails.
Iran says it remains committed to diplomacy in efforts to resolve the nuclear dispute and secure relief from US sanctions, but warns its armed forces will stay on alert. Speaking in Tehran, Foreign Ministry spokesman Esmail Baghaei said Iran is serious about negotiations.
Our position on ending the cruel US sanctions and the nuclear issue is clear, and we are well aware of the US side's viewpoints. If both sides demonstrate goodwill during negotiations, we can hope for a result. We are now in the stage of stating our positions. We hope that we will be able to hold another round of talks within the next 2 to 3 days.
In a Truth Social post, US President Donald Trump said that while he would prefer a deal, failure to reach one would result in a very bad day for Iran. He also rejected reports suggesting divisions within the US military over potential action, insisting that any decision would rest with him. The comments come after 2 rounds of indirect talks between Iran and the United States in Muscat and Geneva earlier this month, with another meeting expected in Geneva on Thursday. The renewed diplomatic push unfolds amid a broader US military build-up in the Middle East.
3 people have been killed in what the US Southern Command described as a strike on a vessel in the Caribbean. According to a post on X, the ship was targeted while reportedly traveling along a suspected drug trafficking route. The military added that no American personnel were injured during the operation. US forces have begun pulling out of their largest base in northeastern Syria, and that's according to Syrian military and security sources. Witnesses say dozens of trucks, some carrying armored vehicles, left the Qasrak base in Hasaka province on Monday morning. The footage showed the convoy moving near the city of Qashminli. The withdrawal comes as the government in Damascus consolidates control in the region. US Central Command has not yet commented. Along the east coast of the United States, a powerful snowstorm has crippled transport, grounding thousands of flights and cutting power of hundreds of thousands of homes. Several states have declared emergencies, with officials urging people to stay indoors as strong winds and heavy snowfall continue.
More than 2.5 feet of snow has fallen along the east coast of the United States, causing widespread travel chaos. The storm hit on Monday, closing roads, halting train services, and forcing airlines to cancel around 7,400 flights, with more than 2,000 delayed. Many of the disruptions were at major airports, including John F. Kennedy International Airport, LaGuardia Airport, Logan International Airport, and Newark Liberty International Airport. More than 1,800 flights scheduled for Tuesday were also cancelled. More than 600,000 homes and businesses were left without power by Monday afternoon, and at least 7 states declared states of emergency. In New York City, Mayor Zohran Mamdani urged residents to stay off the roads so emergency crews could clear the snow. Schools across the region were shut. The storm also forced the closure of the United Nations headquarters in Manhattan. Residents say the repeated storms are taking a toll on daily life.
I told myself that was it, and I thought if I thought that hard enough, that would be it. But it turns out there's another storm, and for me, a person who walks a lot, it makes me a prisoner. We just kind of dug out from the other storm, and I won't be able to really walk around town for another 10 days. So I'm stuck inside. It's just miserable to try to walk through, to try to get onto sidewalks when they haven't cut paths from the road, from the street to the sidewalk. It's really dangerous.
But for some, the severe weather has brought an unexpected upside.
I like this weather because I get to stay with my kids at home. Otherwise, we are always working and just running to work. So today we cannot go anywhere, just stay home.
Winds of up to around 96 kilometers per hour created deep snowdrifts, worsening already dangerous conditions. New York Governor Kathy Hochul deployed 100 National Guard members to assist in the worst-hit areas, including Long Island and the lower Hudson Valley, as the region braced for further heavy snow and strong coastal winds.
Even though the blizzard brought many cities to a standstill, it didn't stop some from going out and making the most of it. New Yorkers ventured into the blanket of snow in Central Park with children and adults building snowmen, staging snowball fights, snapping selfies, and pets, like this one coming up, ran through the fresh white stuff. Isn't that very joyful? Now, as well as this, even this naked cowboy ventured out only in his pants and a guitar to enjoy the frosty weather. In parts of Manhattan, snow shovelers helped to clear walkways and pedestrians walked freely in streets normally blocked by the morning traffic. I don't know, I often like a snow day from time to time. Now we're going to take a short break. When I return, I'll be joined by a guest. Make sure you stay with us. Welcome back and thank you for joining me this morning. Here are the new top stories happening across the region. And we head first to Azerbaijan. And Azerbaijan President Ilham Aliyev has received a delegation led by Iran's Minister of Roads and Urban Development, Farinazeh Sadeh. President Ilham Aliyev welcomed the expansion of the bilateral agenda, underlining that joint projects between Baku and Tehran would create new opportunities and not only for the both nations, but for the wider region. Sadeh highlighted the deep historical, religious and cultural ties linking the two countries. The sides also stressed the importance of the upcoming 17th meeting of the State Commission, which will be held in Baku. Staying on Iran, A News' Deputy Editor-in-Chief Orkan Amashov sat down exclusively with Iran's Minister of Roads and Urban Development and co-chair of the Azerbaijan-Iran Joint Economic Commission for a detailed discussion on regional connectivity and cooperation. Talks centered on progress along the international north-south transport corridor and plans for a new highway bridge over the Araz River. Both sides underlined the strategic significance of the Araz route, linking mainland Azerbaijan with Nakhchivan through Iran, while also acknowledging the broader debate surrounding the proposed Zangezur corridor. You can watch this exclusive interview today on A News.
Naturally, Araz corridor is an important part of regional connectivity. It's always good to have options. There's one connection line there, connecting Azerbaijan's mainland with Nakhchivan via Armenia, which is the Zangezur corridor. Araz corridor is a second route. It's always good to have options and alternatives there.
I would like to touch upon the Araz corridor once again, and I would like to state that the developments regarding Araz corridor are part of the agreement, arrangement and an understanding between two friendly, brotherly and neighbouring countries. But the other corridor mentioned is a development that took place at the initiative of or with the participation of a country outside the region, and these two are, of course, different from each other.
Regarding Zangezur corridor being an external imposition, well, it's a bilateral arrangement between Azerbaijan and Armenia, supported by the United States. But Araz corridor is Azerbaijani-Iranian bilateral dimension. And for Azerbaijan, first one is priority, second one is also absolutely vital.
Following on from this interview that we're going to be showing you on A News tomorrow, I'm now joined to further discuss this by Aytan Gurbanova, a political analyst, joining me this morning. Thank you. Right, good to have you on the programme. Now, my first question, good morning. My first question is, the 17th Joint Commission placed strong emphasis on the connectivity and economic implementation. What are your main takeaways from the outcomes of the meeting?
I think like this meeting between President Ilham Aliyev and Minister of Roads and Urban Development and at the same time 70th Committee and discussed issues should be seen in a practical and realistic way, and it definitely needs to be reflected as a broader and more strategic approach to the bilateral relations between Iran and Azerbaijan. As we know that Azerbaijan and Iran share a long border and geography, which makes cooperation necessary for the both sides, and subsequently stability between the two countries directly affects security, trade and regional developments. And it is obvious that for Azerbaijan, a calm and predictable relations with the neighboring countries, including Iran, is a part of the national security, and connectivity is a crucial point for the establishment of the relations, bilateral relations with Iran. And in this regard, North-South Transport Corridor and the Arband bridge over the Araz River are the good examples for the bilateral cooperations between Azerbaijan and Iran on the connectivity issue.
Right. So that's really interesting what you say. Now let's look at trade, because trade turnover between Azerbaijan and Iran is estimated at roughly $600 million for two neighbouring countries with a long shared border, as you mentioned. Is that a good amount, or do you think there's a shortfall or potential for more increase in that trade?
Yeah, for sure, there are so potential for the increasing of the trade rates between the Azerbaijan and Iran. But when we look back through the short-term history of the relations, we can easily find some points that the relations mostly focused on the concrete projects, transport, logistics, infrastructure, and trade. And this is important because when countries cooperate on the real economic projects, the relations become more stable and less dependent on the political emotions. And I think that in this direction, potential between Azerbaijan and Iran's relations on the bilateral cooperations is in high level, and for the further roadmap of the relations, we can easily find some increasing level of the rates.
And how significant is the Araz corridor then for regional transit for linking mainland Azerbaijan with Nakhchivan?
This project, for sure, very important for Azerbaijan's foreign policy, and at the same time, this project strengthens Azerbaijan's position as a transit country in the region. They increase trade flow, reduce delivery time, and create new economic opportunities for the both sides at the same time for the all countries of the region. And simultaneously, this bridge connecting East Zengezur with Nakhchivan and has special importance for Azerbaijan. It improves internal connectivity, and strong internal links mean stronger state unity and more efficient economic development for Azerbaijan, for Iran, and for all countries.
And do you think beyond the road segment of things, what is the realistic timeline for the railway component running parallel to the Iranian border?
I think that there are some issues, some points on this issue that should be mainly analyzed on the base of national interest standpoint of view Azerbaijan, and at the same time priorities of the Azerbaijan's foreign policy agenda. Azerbaijan is highly interested in the increasing of the relations with neighboring countries, including southern borderline country of the Iran. And in this regard, we are going to keep strong political and economic ties, at the same time increase some transport corridors, at the same time bridges with Iran, and it will definitely create and develop some self-confidence and mutual confidence between the countries. So there are so many external factors that negatively impact on the bilateral relations between Azerbaijan and Iran. In order to exclude such kind of factors, we need to develop and strengthen our mutual confidence and to re-establish new roadmap, new directions for the relations between Azerbaijan and Iran. And connectivity and borderline issues is one of the crucial points, crucial direction on this issue.
Definitely, definitely. And in a recent interview that we mentioned, conducted by Deputy-in-Chief Editor with head of Iranian delegation, it appeared that Iran wasn't particularly enthusiastic by the Zangezur corridor. Do you think Iran has fully come to terms with the realities established after the 2020 war in Karabakh, as well as the August breakthrough meeting attained last year in Washington between Armenia and Azerbaijan?
I think that Iran's standpoint of view regarding the Zengezur Dahliz and Azerbaijan's new realities in the region has already changed during the Pezeshkian's administration's period. Iran has already accepted that Azerbaijan re-established such kind of project, not just only targeting Iran's national interest or national security. It's just connectivity projects uniting all regional countries and not directed to any third party, including Iran.
And do you think, in that case, do you think that this is a good thing, that Iran sees this as a positive thing, or something that they're no longer connected to?
Unfortunately, we cannot just generally talk about the total change of the foreign policy of the Iran toward the region and toward the Azerbaijan. But additionally, I can mention again that Pezeshkian's administration standpoint of view regarding the relations and relations with Azerbaijan and the continuation of the bilateral cooperation with Azerbaijan is on the positive dynamics. So that's why we can easily say that, yes, Iran trying to re-establish mutual confidence with Azerbaijan and establish new relations based on the new realities which designed by Azerbaijan after the Second Karabakh War. And as Iran is one of the neighboring countries that recognize Azerbaijan's territorial integrity, despite of any negative influences during the Second Karabakh War and afterwards.
Right. And just on my last question really is the Rash-Astara Railway. Do you think that's realistically progressing in the right way, or does it remain a politically symbolic move?
Definitely, it will have some symbolic meanings. At the same time, it will impact on the Azerbaijan-Iran relations. At the same time, regional connectivity issues. And I think that Rash-Astara railway station will create new dynamics on the relations with Azerbaijan and Iran. And it will definitely positively impact on the formation of the Iran's new agenda, new foreign policy priorities regarding the Azerbaijan and connectivity project of Azerbaijan which developed by Azerbaijan in the region. So such kind of projects and railway stations and some routes establish relations between the countries. We are aim to reestablish such kind of relations with all neighbors. Our foreign policy priority mainly based on the protect sovereignty and territorial integrity of all countries of the region, ensure border stability, expand economic and transit opportunities, and maintain independent foreign policy choices as well. So this kind of directions and priorities is implemented and is shown for all countries, including Iran. So I think that yes, such kind of railways and projects will definitely will have a good impact and will increase positive dynamics on the bilateral relations between Iran and Azerbaijan.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Ayten Gurbanova. That's been great to have you and to explain all of that in detail. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Right, now we'll move on to the next story. An investigation into a protest outside President Ilham Aliyev's hotel in Washington is raising broader security questions. Officials say the demonstration, which unfolded during the president's visit in February, is now being examined in the context of a wider geopolitical tensions. Here's more.
An investigation into a protest outside a hotel in Washington, D.C., where Azerbaijan President Ilham Aliyev was staying on the 19th of February, has uncovered new details, placing the incident within a broader security context. The demonstration prompted a swift response from presidential security personnel and U.S. law enforcement. The situation was quickly contained and order was restored without further escalation. A review of video footage shows several individuals engaging in provocative behavior, including the use of insulting and inflammatory language directed at Azerbaijan's leadership. Some participants attempted to approach a restricted security zone before being pushed back. Subsequent examination identified a number of those involved. Among them was Adil Amrali, born in 1990, described as a Russian citizen who had previously lived in Russia and left Azerbaijan in 2022 before relocating to the United States. Rahim Yagublu, a member of the Musavat party and son of opposition figure Tawfik Yagublu, was also identified. Officials say he left Azerbaijan in 2022 and now resides in the United States. Another participant named was Bakhtiar Abbasov, reported to hold Russian citizenship and to have left Azerbaijan in 2015. Additional individuals identified include Kilas Isayev, Kanan Jafarov, and Tural Alakbarli, all of whom had previously departed Azerbaijan and are currently living abroad. Several of those involved had extensive travel journeys connected to the Russian Federation, with some having lived there for prolonged periods before moving to Western countries. Some analysts in Baku described the episode as part of what they characterize as a broader hybrid pressure environment, combining information narratives, political rhetoric, and actions staged on foreign platforms. There has been no public acknowledgement from Moscow of any role in organizing the protest.
Iran has reportedly agreed a secret €500 million arms deal with Russia to acquire thousands of advanced shoulder-fired missiles, according to the Financial Times. The agreement, reportedly signed in Moscow in December, commits Russia to deliver 500 Verba-launched units and 2,500 missiles between 2027 and 2029. The deal was negotiated between Russia's state arms exporter and Iran's defense ministry, according to the newspaper, citing leaked documents. The report comes in the middle of heightened tensions over Iran's nuclear program following US strikes last year that Washington said destroyed key facilities, though an initial intelligence assessment suggests the damage only delayed Iran's capabilities by months. Humanitarian assistance continues to move toward Gaza as Turkey dispatches another major aid shipment. The latest delivery comes amid renewed diplomatic efforts and ongoing international talks on the stabilization and reconstruction of the Strip.
Over the weekend, the Turkish Red Crescent sent its 21st humanitarian aid shipment bound for Gaza, departing from southern Turkey and heading to Egypt's northeastern city of El Arish. The shipment comes after the partial reopening earlier this month of the Gaza-Egypt-Rafah border crossing, which had remained largely closed for the past 2 years. The latest Turkish vessel carried more than 3,000 tons of urgently needed supplies, including food, drinking water, clothing, and materials for building shelters. Upon arrival in El Arish, the aid was received by the Egyptian Red Crescent, which is expected to coordinate the transfer of the supplies into Gaza through the Rafah crossing. The delivery took place as Turkey continues to signal broad support for Gaza's recovery. Last week, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan said Ankara was ready to assist in rebuilding Gaza's shattered health and education sectors and help train police forces in the war-torn Palestinian territory. Speaking in Washington at the first meeting of the Board of Peace, chaired by U.S. President Donald Trump, Fidan also said Turkey was ready to contribute troops to a proposed stabilization force for Gaza. The Board of Peace is an international body designed to oversee stabilization and reconstruction efforts in Gaza within a broader peace framework initiated last year. Fidan warned, however, that Gaza's humanitarian situation remains dire and that ceasefire violations have continued, calling for what he described as a prompt and effective international response to the crisis. This is Adam Maro for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Strains are intensifying between Afghanistan and Pakistan after the recent Pakistan airstrikes, with the Taliban saying civilians were killed. Islamabad insists it targeted militant camps linked to recent suicide attacks in Pakistan. Our correspondent, Tamim Bahis, has more from Kabul.
Tensions between Afghanistan and Pakistan are escalating after Pakistan conducted airstrikes inside Afghan territory. Kabul has reacted sharply. The Ministry of Defense has described the strikes as a blatant violation of Afghanistan's sovereignty and international law, warning that attacks on civilian areas and religious centers will not go unanswered. In a statement, the ministry said a measured response would be delivered at the appropriate time, stressing that the country's territorial integrity is not negotiable. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs summoned Pakistan's ambassador and delivered a formal protest note, calling the strikes a breach of territorial integrity and a provocative act that risks further destabilizing relations. According to local reports, the strike hit Baisud district in Nangarhar early Sunday, killing around 20 members of a single family in Gardi Kach village and injuring several others. A religious seminary in Paktika province was also reportedly targeted. Islamabad accuses Kabul of failing to act against militants from Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan group it says is operating from Afghan soil. It says it has evidence linking recent attacks in Pakistan to leadership figures based across the border. The strikes mark a sharp escalation in tensions just months after the two sides agreed to a fragile ceasefire following deadly border clashes. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
Georgia continues to strengthen its geopolitical focus on regional connectivity and its role as a key transit hub in the South Caucasus. The latest high-level economic talks in Armenia highlight Tbilisi's strategy to boost cooperation with its closest regional partners, while supporting peace-building efforts and protecting its position in emerging regional transport routes. Our correspondent Nini Nikolashvili has more.
Georgia has been steadily increasing its engagement with Armenia over the past 2 years with frequent high-level visits and growing economic coordination. This reflects Georgia's broader strategy to position itself as a central connector between Europe, Asia and the South Caucasus through the so-called Middle Corridor, a major transit route linking Asian and European markets. This strategic direction was highlighted during the recent visit of Georgia's economy minister, Mariam Kriushvili, to Armenia, where she held talks with Armenia's economy minister, Gevorg Papoyan. The ministers discussed expanding cooperation in transport infrastructure, energy connectivity, and trade, key elements that support Georgia's long-term transit ambitions. The discussions come at an important moment for the region. With ongoing peace efforts between Armenia and Azerbaijan and new regional transport initiatives under consideration, Armenia may gain alternative connectivity routes that could potentially compete with Georgia's traditional transit role. In response, Georgia is actively strengthening its partnership with Armenia to ensure that it remains a critical link in regional logistics and trade networks. A notable step in this direction is Georgia's decision to impose symbolic tariffs on the transit of Azerbaijani oil products to Armenia through its territory. This measure supports Armenia's access to energy supplies while reinforcing Georgia's role as a reliable transit partner. At the same time, it allows Georgia to maintain its economic and strategic relevance in regional transport flows. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, A News.
It's time for a break. When I return, I'll have a full update on the latest headlines, plus a look at what's making the front pages this morning. Stay with us. Now, let's take a look at some of the stories shaping the day across the globe. And we head first to CNN, where the headline here is former UK ambassador to US Peter Mandelson arrested amid Epstein probes. Now, he was arrested on Monday on suspicion of a misconduct in public office, and that was according to the London's Metropolitan Police, and had been accused of passing market-sensitive information to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein when he was as a business secretary in the UK. Now, this follows a search warrant at his 2 addresses in Wiltshire and the Camden areas. Now, only just a couple of hours this morning, Mandelson was released later on bail, is what a Metropolitan Police spokesperson has said. Now, the revelations from the latest release is what's actually driven Peter Mandelson to be arrested with his links in relation to that. We know that Peter Mandelson actually resigned from the Labour Party earlier this month due to his links to the former sex offender who's now passed away. And that's also led to Prime Minister's chief aide, Morgan McSweeney, who also resigned because he recommended Mandelson to be put into this position, which is now, he is now resigned from. So more information of that will be coming out if there's any extra things. Just to remind you, last week, also former Prince Andrew, Windsor Mountbatten, he was also arrested in connection to his links to Epstein when he was in a government official office as well. And an investigation continues into that. Now we go into the next headline making its way across the morning, and that's France 24. And that's France curtails US Ambassador Kushner's government access after he fails to obey summons. So what is this about? It's Donald Trump's ambassador to France has been banned basically from meeting French government ministers after he failed to show up for a meeting at the Foreign Ministry to explain US's comments about the killing of a far-right activist. Now, Charles Kushner is actually, his son Jared Kushner is married to President Donald Trump's oldest daughter Ivanka, and he is the one who was summoned to a meeting at 7 p.m. by the Foreign Minister in France. Now, Kushner cited personal commitments as for the reasons why he could not attend the meeting and sent a senior official from the embassy to take his place. However, the response to that was that France's foreign ministry said, in light of this apparent failure to grasp the basic requirements of the ambassadorial mission, the minister has requested that he no longer be allowed direct access to members of the French government. And that's what the foreign ministry said in a statement. The ministry also added that Kushner could continue to have exchanges with foreign ministry officials, but the no-show was Kushner's actual second since his appointment to Paris embassy last year. So we know that that's the reasons why. Now, there is a feud erupted due to comments made because of Trump's side and France investigating it in regards to the death of the far-right activist, right-wing activist, following a violent riot in Lyon on February 14th this year. And that's exactly what they wanted to discuss, but Kushner was not available. Right, we'll go to our third headline today, and that's on our A News website and on a number of websites all throughout the globe, and that's in regards to drug lord El Mencho death sparks nationwide violence at and at least 62 dead in Mexico. So we know that there was a military operation to capture El Mencho, and unfortunately there was retaliation between his cartel and the Mexican government military, and unfortunately El Mencho was actually killed in the raid, as well as 25 other members of the National Guard and one security guard, and that was according to Mexico's security minister. Now, who is El Mencho? He's a 59-year-old who was one of the world's most wanted drug traffickers. He led the Jalisco New Generation cartel, which had become the country's most powerful criminal organization, and his capture and death of Mexico's most wanted man was stemmed from they were able to get in contact with his romantic partner, which led to where he was staying and able to actually go to his place of residence and find out where he was. Now, the president, Claudia Sheinbaum, has urged calm, and authorities said all of the more than 250 cartel roadblocks across 20 states had been cleared, as cartel part of El Mencho's cartel were also fighting with the military, which is what has led to the violence because of his capture and subsequent death. Now, we have more information in regards to this particular story coming up in our report, so let's take a look.
Security remains tight across several states in Mexico after a pre-dawn military operation against cartel leader Nemesio Oseguera, better known as El Mencho, left at least 62 people dead and sparked coordinated violence nationwide. Among those killed were 25 members of the National Guard and 34 suspected gang members. Dozens more were injured as cartel loyalists set up 85 roadblocks in more than a dozen states, torching vehicles and blocking highways. The government has deployed 2,000 additional troops to Jalisco, the stronghold of the Jalisco New Generation cartel. The operation comes amid renewed pressure from US President Donald Trump on Mexico to intensify its crackdown on drug trafficking ahead of a review of the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement Trade Pact.
All operations are carried out by federal forces. There is no U.S. participation in the operation. What there is, as we have said here several times, is a great deal of information sharing. The understanding with the United States is based primarily on the exchange of intelligence information.
Officials say a tip linked to El Mencho's romantic relationships led security forces to his hideout in the mountain town of Tapalpa. He was wounded in a firefight and died while being airlifted to Mexico City. In Guadalajara, streets remain unusually quiet, with businesses shut and public transport running below normal levels.
Yes, I'm afraid, but I also need to work. And so we're working here, but keeping an eye on the situation, and depending on it, we'll see if we take shelter or continue working.
Tourism has also been affected, with flights to Puerto Vallarta and Guadalajara suspended over the weekend.
It's not possible to get out right now because, first, we're not allowed to leave the resort under any circumstance, so we're locked down in the resort. And even if we went out on the streets, the cartel would stop us and force us to get out of the car and light the car on fire. So the whole city is under lockdown. No one is going out because everyone is scared of getting stopped by the cartel.
Oseguera was considered Mexico's most wanted drug trafficker and headed one of the country's most powerful and heavily armed criminal organizations with global operations. President Claudia Sheinbaum said on Monday morning that roadblocks had been cleared and the situation was expected to normalize, with flights due to resume on Monday or Tuesday.
Peter Mandelson, the former UK ambassador to the US, has been released on bail. It's after he was arrested by London police on Monday on suspicion of misconduct in public office. It follows revelations over his ties to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Mandelson denies any wrongdoing. There was no immediate response from Mandelson's lawyers. The European Union has postponed a vote on its July 2025 trade agreement with Washington. It comes after the US Supreme Court struck down President Donald Trump's previous tariffs, prompting him to impose new import taxes. Ross Cullen, our Paris correspondent, has more.
Well, the European Union arguing on Monday that the whole picture when it comes to the Brussels-Washington trade relationship has now changed as a result of the US Supreme Court's decision to strike down President Trump's tariffs and then the president's response to impose new import taxes of 10%. And then over the weekend, he announced they would be increased to 15%. The European Union Parliament was due to have a vote on the trade accord that was signed in July 2025 by the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and Donald Trump. That vote, set to take place on Tuesday, has now been postponed. As a result of this, they are freezing the ratification process for that trade deal because of all of the uncertainty provoked by the US Supreme Court decision. And the EU spokesman saying on Monday that a deal is a deal, you have to honour it. The US must provide answers to the European Union as to how that trading landscape between both sides is going to look going forward. They want answers to be able to provide stable solutions for European consumers and European businesses. Ross Cullen, A News, Paris.
Across several European cities, thousands gathered in support of Ukraine as the war enters its fourth year. Demonstrators say the conflict cannot be normalised even as diplomatic efforts attempt to restart talks.
Pro-Ukraine supporters filled the streets across Europe and beyond to mark 4 years of full-scale war in Ukraine. From Milan to Budapest, from Istanbul to Barcelona, thousands marched in solidarity. A reminder that 4 years on, the war continues to shape lives far beyond Ukraine's borders. In Milan, protesters condemned the decision to allow Russian and Belarusian athletes to compete in the upcoming Paralympic Games, arguing that sport cannot be separated from a conflict that has cost so many lives.
The Ukrainian diaspora, we are really annoyed and we are really bothered by this decision of World Olympic Organization about the participation of Belarusian and Russian ex-militaries in the Paralympic Games. It's really like trying to forget and cancel the 4 years of war fought in Ukraine, thousands and thousands of deaths in Ukraine.
In Budapest, around 1,000 Hungarians and Ukrainian expatriates gathered as the issue becomes entangled in domestic politics ahead of Hungary's parliamentary elections. Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has framed the vote as a choice between war or peace. Protesters rejected that narrative, insisting the responsibility for the conflict lies squarely with Moscow.
I expected from the start that Ukraine will be the enemy target, and it will become the height of the election campaign. But I have not noticed in my surroundings that the view of the war would have changed significantly. We are not talking about the view of Ukraine, but it is about a war that Russia had started and refuses to stop.
In Istanbul, dozens of Ukrainians held a memorial for missing and captive soldiers, kneeling in silence and holding photographs of loved ones who have not returned. In Madrid and Barcelona, thousands marched under banners reading "Ukraine defends us all" and 4 years still fighting for freedom.
I'm here for all the people suffering in Ukraine. Many have lost their homes, their friends, their family, for all the men and women on the front who are fighting for our freedom and our rights.
As the war moves into its 5th year, it has claimed an immense human toll. The Centre for Strategic and International Studies estimates around 1.2 million Russian battle casualties, including roughly 325,000 killed. Ukrainian casualties are put at between 500,000 and 600,000, with up to 140,000 deaths. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said earlier this month, 55,000 Ukrainian soldiers have been killed in the entire war. Fresh negotiations between Russia and Ukraine are expected to resume in Geneva on February 26th. Yet despite renewed diplomatic efforts, missile and drone strikes continue, underscoring how far any lasting settlement still appears.
European Union foreign ministers have failed to reach an agreement on the 20th package of sanctions against Russia. Hungary has blocked the proposal on the 4th anniversary of Russia's invasion in Ukraine. Budapest's foreign minister says the country will not support any EU decision that benefits Ukraine as long as Kyiv continues to stop oil deliveries to Hungary via Druzhba pipeline. Ukraine says the pipeline is damaged after Russian strikes. Tensions between Pakistan and Afghanistan have escalated after Pakistani airstrikes along the border reportedly killed at least 70 militants, while the UN said it had received credible reports that at least 13 civilians were killed and 7 others injured in the attacks. Joining me now to discuss this is Dr. Farhat Asif, President Institute of Peace and Diplomatic Studies in Islamabad, Pakistan. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much.
My first question really is, what has sparked these new set of strikes that Pakistan has released on Afghanistan?
Thank you so much for this important question. And the tension between Pakistan and Afghanistan is building up and escalating. The spark recently that has happened, of course, when we look at the patterns of attacks from Pakistan to Afghanistan, based on the fact that how the spiral and rise of the terrorist attacks in Pakistan. Recently, as you must have known, that earlier in February, we have an attack on Shia Mosque, which has killed nearly 31 people and, of course, injured hundreds of worshippers who were praying in the mosque. And then subsequently, we have witnessed a rise and speculation, rise and increase of the incidents of terrorists in Bajaur region, Bannu in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, and with the attacks on the security personnel and civilians as well. This has created a lot of tensions, and recently the abduction of the Pakistani soldiers, killing of the soldiers, and attacks has increased. That has resulted into this important strike there in Afghanistan. Pakistan's information minister has mentioned this as a retributive sparked by the conclusive evidence that these attacks are planned and directed towards the leadership of the Taliban Pakistan, which is Pakistan called as Fitnatul Kharji and ISKP. This is ISKP affiliates in the border regions. Pakistan official statement has been recently made, and of course these are based on the fact that how these strikes were made. 7 specific militant camps have been attacked and described as intelligence-based operations, and 70 to 80 militants have been killed. Key TTP Taliban commanders have been also killed in the hideouts. To understand this entire dynamics, which I would really like to share with you, is that there's a spiral of the conflicts between both Pakistan and Afghan government based in Kabul. Pakistan has continuously sharing that these are constantly documented attacks coming from the Afghan soil, especially the recent Shia mosque attack, which has been very highly devastating. And if you look at 2025, nearly 1,500 TTP claimed attacks have been made on Pakistani soil, which is the highest number of attacks since Taliban government has came into power. And the fragile truce between both countries in October 2025, which has been brokered by Qatar and Turkey after intense border clashes between both countries. And since October, November, and then December, and you look at this, we are almost into Ramadan, where the attacks have been happening. This is quite challenging for Pakistan to really build up and engage Taliban. There's also been denying...
Dr. Asif,
yes,
sorry,
exactly.
just you've given me a lot of information in regards to that, but I just need to add that Afghanistan has denied a number of things that Pakistan has said in regards to it being retributive and also targeting militants, which it says civilians were also targeted and killed. My question now is, where do we go from here? Obviously, Afghanistan is saying one thing, Pakistan is saying something else. We know that there was a ceasefire in place since October last year, which has now gone out of the window. So what happens in regards to conflict resolution?
you see, Pakistan, the situation is very tense. Both sides are locked into their positions. Pakistan is taking the military options. Earlier, Pakistan has also resorted to diplomatic engagement. You must have seen that there are visits happening between Pakistan to Kabul. Our interior minister went, our foreign minister also went. The high-level visit happening, and dialogue and engagement were continued. But there has been continuously denying of the fact that the Afghan soil is used as footprint for as a home for creating this insurgency, this attacks towards Pakistan, which is the fact that on other side, if you look at the locked position from there, both situations are very tense. And here, as you see that there's a note of the fact that how both sides can need towards the process of mediation. Maybe a similar process where Turkey, Qatar, or many other mediators who can use this important opportunity to build and engage both sides into the dialogue process. I think that it's a very important point here, because there's a tense and high level of a resort of the kind of revenge or something like that is coming from Afghanistan, which is
Yes,
again a dangerous spiral of how this will be happening. So I think
exactly.
that there is a need for dialogue from both sides. Civilians and in Afghanistan and also in Pakistan are suffering. So I think that there is a time for the mediators who are early being engaged can be engaged here.
Dr. Asif, thank you so much for that and for clarifying it. It's just interesting. We'll definitely be watching this closely in relation to high tensions between both neighbouring countries. Thank you again, Dr. Asif.
Thank you so much.
Right, now we move over to Canada and what's been going on there. Now, Canada has summoned senior executives from OpenAI in regards to its safety concerns and safety protocols. Now, it comes after the company said it did not alert police in regards to about an account linked to a mass shooting in the Canadian province of the British Columbia. Now, if you remember, 18-year-old Jessie Van Rotsela killed 8 people in the Tumbler Ridge on the 10th of February before taking her own life. OpenAI says it banned her ChatGPT account in June last year for violating policies related to violent activity. However, it concluded it did not meet the threshold for reporting it to law enforcement. Artificial Intelligence Minister Evan Solomon says OpenAI's safety team will meet officials in Ottawa on Tuesday to explain how the company decides when to escalate cases to the police. You're watching Daybreak. Stay with us. Europe now marks the 4th anniversary of Russia's war in Ukraine, with leaders warning of ongoing threats from Moscow and growing influence campaigns by China. The EU is also pressing Hungary to approve a major loan to Kyiv, while tensions in the Middle East and US-Iran relations remain high. Our correspondent Anita Sharma has more from the Netherlands.
Welcome to this day in Europe, as the Foreign Affairs Council fails on new Russia sanctions, but vows to counter Moscow's lies and algorithms. After the meeting in Brussels, Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas said Russia is spending billions in influence campaigns and China is growing operations. She urged online pushback with sanctions and law enforcement, calling FIMI, or foreign influence, manipulation and interference, a weapon aimed at the heart of democracies. On this 4th anniversary of Russia's war in Ukraine, Kallas maintains Moscow is blocking peace, not Kyiv, and that Europe must flip the script so Russia respects borders, ends sabotage, pays war damages, and returns kidnapped Ukrainian children. She said the European Investment Bank will be better used, as contributions to Ukraine's energy fund doubled last year to 1.85 billion euros after Russia targeted energy infrastructure. Kallas also pointed to tighter nets around Russia's shadow fleet, a 40-staff cap on the EU's Russian mission, and efforts to bar hundreds of thousands of Russian soldiers from the Schengen area, stating that the bloc does not want war criminals and saboteurs roaming the streets. But she also lamented the failed 20th sanctions package as an unwanted message. On this, European Council President Antonio Costa reportedly sent a letter to Hungary's Viktor Orban urging the Prime Minister to honor the €90 billion EU loan to Kyiv after Budapest said it would block the plan until Russian oil flows again through a pipeline that traverses Ukraine. Costa and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen will meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kyiv today in what Kallas calls a brutal and senseless anniversary. Regarding the Middle East, she said Gaza progress hinges on disarming Hamas and Israeli withdrawal. The Rafah border crossing mission will be redeployed amid too few crossings, and Israel's West Bank powers were deemed illegal. With eyes also on the U.S.-Iran conflict, Kallas warned of, quote, hard-to-control consequences. For A News, I'm Anita Sharma in Arnhem, Netherlands.
US President Donald Trump's most senior military advisor has warned the White House about several potential risks of attacking Iran. That's according to Washington media reports, which say General Dan Kane has voiced a number of concerns, including that any conflict could put pressure on the US's depleted stockpiles of missiles, mutilations as well. Our correspondent Ube Shambada has the details from Washington, D.C.
President Trump's senior most military advisor and chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, has, according to new reports, advised the White House that a military campaign against Iran could pose a number of major risks. One serious concern by American military planners is that a prolonged military campaign against Iran could seriously tax the already depleted stockpiles of U.S. missile munitions, particularly long-range interceptors specially designed to shoot down ballistic missiles. Iran is believed to have thousands of long-range ballistic missiles that they could fire against American military bases and Navy warships in the region. U.S. missile defenses were used extensively to defend Israel against Iranian missiles during last year's 12-day war. A number of Washington media sources are saying that many in Trump's orbit are debating the risks that a prolonged military campaign against Iran's targets would entail, given the size of the country and the number of underground military bases that Iran has rebuilt since last year's conflict. And reports in Washington suggest that Trump's special envoys, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, hope that talks later this week will offer the president an opportunity to give diplomacy one last chance. I'm Ube Shibander, A News, Washington.
Now we head to some tech news, and now in regards to what is happening in the world of IT and different things in relation to all of that. Now, have you heard some experts say that AI is taking over jobs? Yes, well, I have, and I'm sure you have too. Well, a storage warehouse in Beijing run by robots is providing a lot more efficiency. And there are no surprises there that there are no people in the warehouse. Now, here's Nathan Kamanga with more of that story, plus a few others in relation to our tech news switch.
This is a warehouse. Notice how there's no people inside? Well, that's because most of the storage, packing and sorting is done by artificial intelligence powered robots. The company, called Asia No. 1, is a smart logistics center in Beijing and says the use of robotics and automation has greatly increased efficiency, especially during festive periods like the Chinese New Year. According to Asia No. 1, its daily outbound volume peaks to around 12,000 orders, with an average of 3 items dispatched every second. To pull off such a massive operation, different robots take on specific roles. Climbing robots are in charge of retrieving items from between the racks, while ground robots are taking over to transport the retrieved items onward. Compared with traditional manual handling, coordinated robot operations have boosted transfer efficiency by 73%, the company reports. With this feat, the prevalent cliché of AI taking over jobs is slowly becoming a reality. Now take a look at this. Two of Hollywood's biggest stars battling it out in a cinematic scene. Except it's not real at all. It was made by Irish filmmaker Rory Robinson using the just released C-Dance 2.0, which is an AI model from ByteDance. Yes, ByteDance, the same one behind TikTok. Ever since they dropped their latest video generation model, the film industry has been sent into panic, with major studios like Disney and Paramount accusing the Chinese company of copyright infringement after ultra-realistic videos of movie characters circulated the internet. ByteDance might just have changed the future of film and cinema as we know it. Hollywood, over to you. And now, for all you Android users, Google has just released the Pixel 10a. The mid-range smartphone has an asking price of around $500 and comes in 4 new colors, including lavender, berry, fog, and obsidian. Now, I wouldn't fault you for thinking that it looks just like last year's Pixel 9a. As a matter of fact, here's a side-by-side comparison. See if you can spot the difference. Well, that's because Google maintained the chassis of last year's phone, while only changing a few things like making the display brighter and more durable and introducing a faster charging rate. Differences you'd have to Pixel peep to notice. They also added satellite SOS connectivity in some regions. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to catch up with us for more tech news and insights on the next show.
Wow, very interesting things there that I need to take more note of. That Hollywood stuff was crazy. Okay, well, thank you so much for watching Daybreak with me, Nadia Jani. I'll be back tomorrow to take you through the latest updates throughout the morning. Take care and make sure you stay tuned to A News.